Robbing a bank is nothing like it is in the movies. To get away with it for real means overcoming some big obstacles. I'm going on a journey to discover the key areas where the robbers slip up, often in the most spectacular style. It's unbelievable from that little pack of gelatin.
That's right. That
Semtex. I will learn how the smallest of mistakes will ultimately lead to the robber's downfall.
Oh, man, that is a cannon.
You've basically got 64 chances of being caught there.
As I try to find out whether it's possible to get away with a major bank heist.
He's lost it. I think we've caught him already.
He's again. No, we'll stay with him.
In February this year, in the sleepy town of Tunbridge, a gang of thieves carried out Britain's biggest armed robbery. They made off with a cool £53 million. It should have been a perfect heist. But the Tunbridge raid is far from over for the robbers. The truth is that getting away with a big heist is harder than ever. We'll show you how police expertise and human failure can destroy the best laid plans as we take you inside a bank robbery. During the course of the programme, we're going to see a gang of thieves attempt an audacious heist. Each member of the firm has a specialist role. The gunman, the bagman, the entryman, and the getaway driver. We will follow them every step of the way and reveal the main danger zones facing the gang as they attempt to pull off the perfect robbery. The very first mistake an armed robber can make actually happens long before they set foot into a bank.
Picking a team is probably the most crucial aspect of setting up any armed robbery that you can ever have. And I think the very best gangs of armed robbers tend to be brothers or members of the same family, because then you have absolute trust between everyone involved.
If you go back to the 1980s, where you had career professional robbers, armed robbers, then basically what you'll find would be networks of families, networks of people who'd grown up together, people who'd known each other and were connected.
But the days of the old school gangs such as the Crays and the Richardsons are long gone.
The problem is that as the gangs become more sophisticated and the crimes they carry out become more sophisticated, you need more and more people, which forces you to go outside the family unit to recruit them. And when that happens, the opportunities for betrayal do grow.
And the people who can best exploit this weakness is the Metropolitan Police's Specialist Robbery Unit, the Flying Squad.
They are one of the most flexible, most adaptable and one of the most professional units that police have ever seen in the capital city. They can get to and deal with the big planned set-piece armed robberies of the kinds like Brinks-Mat, like the Silver Bullion robbery and other major robberies. The Flying Squad have been there, have dealt with them and have been successful.
The old saying that blood is thicker than water doesn't ring true with the gangs of today.
There is no honour amongst thieves. Clearly anyone that is arrested by the Flying Squad becomes fairly desperate because our conviction rate is just under 100%. And they know this. And of course people want to tell us about their involvement and others' involvement if it means that they get, a lesser sentence.
It's the tongues of people that put people in prison. You're not putting your wits against the Sherlock Holmes no more. It's people's mouths get people caught.
In 1973, one of Britain's most notorious bank robbers, Bertie Smalls, turned supergrass. In his 4-year reign, he and his gang amassed £1.3 million, which in those days was a lot of cash. But when faced with a lengthy sentence, Smalls decided to turn over everyone in exchange for immunity from prison.
There is no more tight units. Believe me, when the shit hits the fan and one of them's caught and it's grass me up or grass the rest up or you take the whole blame, right, they crack.
Assuming you do have a watertight team, the next area that robbers slip up on is turning up with the wrong tools for the job. The gun is often seen by the robber as the main tool for getting at the cash. But actually, it can be the reason for their downfall.
For the armed robber, the firearm is a tool of the trade. He picks it up at the last possible moment and he gets rid of it as quickly as possible. That gun can send him to prison and he knows that.
An armed robber doesn't necessarily consider himself a killer. He doesn't want to kill anyone, he wants to go and get a load of money and run home. So he needs a gun that looks scary. And normally, nothing looks more scary than a sawn-off.
But as I would discover when I went to see firearms expert Nick Jeffries, with every gun, there's a problem for the armed robber.
Most bank robbers, if they use a weapon, use a sawn-off shotgun.
Yeah.
It's an easier gun to carry, but it's certainly not an easier gun to use. Obviously, you've taken the stock off, so you no longer have anything to put on your shoulder to point it, and you've taken the barrels off. So what you've done is you've made it a very difficult and unwieldy weapon. This is hard to point at something. I mean, you've got to judge about 10 things in your mind to possibly have a chance of hitting something.
The sawn-off shotgun was the sort of weapon of choice because you could conceal it under your overcoat when walking into the bank, etc. A very powerful, very intimidating weapon.
To point a gun like this is fairly easy. To point one like this is a lot more difficult. You try that, see what you think. All ready to go.
Goodness. I tell you what, I thought that was going to be easier. I had totally missed the target, even from this short range.
As you see, it's not easy.
I wouldn't want to come face to face with that. But it's the same with all these guns. If you take a gun into a bank and use it, you're going to leave behind so much evidence, aren't you?
Oh yeah, you are. I mean, anything you fire is traceable back to the weapon you fired it from.
Over the years, there's been some kind of evolution of the kind of weapons that have been used by bank robbers. And over time, those guns have become automatic weapons. They've become small machine pistols. And these are the kinds of weapons now that the firearms officers and the robbery squad officers have to face.
Tell me about the Uzi.
OK, you have to remember, this is a gun that is made to be used by a highly trained person.
So do you shoot this from the hip or do you put it to the shoulder?
Shoot it from the hip, shoot it from the shoulder. Most bank robbers, though, once again, we're in that concealability area. So as you can see, what we want is the similar length of a sawn-off shotgun.
Yeah.
So your bank robber's going to use it from the hip.
Yeah.
So try it from the hip,
OK.
see how you get on.
How many bullets have you got in this?
This is 32.
Right.
Right, that's yours. Get yourself comfortable, take a nice firm grip of it and squeeze the trigger.
Oh, man, that is a cannon. It was terrifying to think that in a blink of an eye, this gun could have easily mowed down a dozen people. The power in that gun is unbelievable. To take that into a bank and to use that, that's got to be incredibly dangerous. Those bullets are going to go everywhere.
You think of all those spent cases, how much evidence have you left on the floor?
I've left a bit of a mess here, haven't I?
You have. What you've done is you've possibly left 32 sets of fingerprints, 32 sets of DNA. You've basically got 64 chances of being caught there. And what you've also done is you've imprinted into the back of the case the marks on the bolt of that gun.
The guns themselves can provide an extraordinary forensic lead for the detectives. If those guns are fired, each round has an identifier from the weapon that fired it. The rifling on the barrel leaves marks on the round, so the detectives are able to tie a weapon from one case to another.
They may have got past the hurdles of hiring the team and tooling up, but a bigger challenge awaits the robbers: how to get into the vault. In the early days of bank robbery, gangs could just blast their way through the doors. But 21st century technology has put a stop to that.
The plan in the bank robbery days are finished, right? So security and the financial resources to have an impregnable bank has made an impregnable bank.
The days of the specialist safecrackers working out combinations are long gone. Today's banks are using a far more sophisticated and less penetrable technology, based on the unique codes of the human body.
Biometric systems are things that you are. You have fingerprint recognition. the shape of your finger is unique and the shape of your fingerprint is unique. You have hand geometry. You have the veins inside your hand. You have the iris of your eye. You have the retina of your eye. The shape of your face or even your voice. These are the various recognition systems that can be used. They are unique and they cannot be faked.
Unable to overcome modern security methods, robbers are turning their attention to the members of the bank staff, which has led to the terrifying rise of tiger kidnapping.
Well, let's get more on our top story, the £40 million robbery in Kent.
It was a crime used to brutal effect in the Tunbridge raid.
Now, around the same time, two men called at his family home and abducted the man's wife and young son.
To complete one of the most audacious raids this country has ever seen.
Tiger kidnapping involves the violent abduction of a key member of bank staff and holding their family hostage to ensure access to the money.
It doesn't matter how great a safe you've got or how secure a vault you've got, you still need someone who can actually open it, and if you point a gun at that person and say, open it for me, then 9 times out of 10 they're going to do it.
There is nothing that brings greater human misery to a family or to a business than a tiger kidnap.
The robbers carry out weeks of surveillance on the routines of their chosen target before planning their attack.
There's been a small but steady growth of these kinds of robberies, which again are a very kind of disturbing sort of trend. But you can see that within that as these targets become much more harder to hit, that robbers are engaging in these more kind of desperate and dangerous kinds of activities.
But although the robbers may consider the kidnap as a foolproof way of getting into the bank, it can ultimately lead to their own downfall. Carrying out a tiger kidnap leaves another trail of evidence. In the Tunbridge raid, the bank manager's family remembered being taken to a farmhouse, giving the police a vital lead.
One of the things about crime and solving crime is that the higher the degree of the contact between the victim and the offender, the greater the chances the offender is going to be caught. So once you engage in a tiger kidnap, because of those associations, because people can identify you, because you leave traces, all those kinds of things, you also increase your chances of being caught.
And it's not just their chances of getting arrested that have gone up. When the gang are finally brought to justice, kidnapping will add years to their prison sentence. Coming up next, the destruction and dangers of safe blowing.
Would be rupturing your internal organs.
And can the gang pull off the perfect raid? There are over 11,000 banks in Britain. Now for the professional criminal, that's over 11,000 targets. We're following one gang of bank robbers as they try and pull off the perfect heist on just one of those targets. They've put together the team and got the tools for the job, but they've also committed their first act of aggression. Tiger kidnapping the bank manager and his wife. However sophisticated the bank robber claims to be, the truth is, violence is always part of most heists.
What you find with people who become involved in armed robbery is that they learn to manipulate and orchestrate violence as a very deliberate act. It's not a spontaneous outburst. It has to be calculated, it has to be orchestrated, it has to be very deliberate, it has to be focused.
Successful bank robbers are probably people who feel rather less fear than most. They have this enjoyment of risk, enjoyment of danger, of jeopardy, and probably the enjoyment of intimidating other people.
It's addictive, I'm afraid. Right, your head will not let you go to work for £350 a week, doing 5.5 days a week. If you have once just run into a place and give me the money, right, now, and in 15 seconds you've gone home with 200 grand.
Ultimately, the real loss involved in a ruthless bank robbery has little to do with money. It's the human cost of innocent victims caught up in the crime.
The bank can usually afford to take the hit of cash. It is the victims, in a way, that the robber is robbing, because he's robbing them of their lives.
Robbery is a violent offence. It always involves the threat of harm or actual harm to an innocent victim.
From the 3rd of July 1995, at 8:05 in the morning when the attack took place, my life has been changed completely.
Working for a security firm in Salford, Greater Manchester, Graham Huckabee was driving a van loaded with over £4 million in cash to a bullion centre.
The van, full to the roof. My colleague gets out, the shutter goes up. As I start to reverse, a masked gunman appears at the side of the van and says to me, "We've got your mate. If you don't open the door, I'm going to blow his head off." It's a split-second decision. So I open the door, and a gun is placed at the back of my head. And this masked gunman then tells me to drive. I can remember looking down at my hands on the wheel, looking at my knuckles and how white they were. I actually wet myself. I was that scared. Nothing or nobody was going to get in their way from taking that money. It just haunts you. I'm a completely different person than I was when I started that shift.
To this day, none of the stolen money has been recovered, and the men who carried out the robbery and terrorised Graham Huckabee has never been brought to justice. The raid is the moment of no return. As soon as you set foot into that bank brandishing a weapon, you cease to be a normal citizen. You've become an outlaw.
Everybody on the ground!
For the robbers, the raid is the critical moment of the whole operation, and it's also the most dangerous. Everything they've been planning is at stake, and they have to be fast, because a police response unit will be on them inside 10 minutes.
Once in that building, once you've stepped foot in that doorway, there is no going back.
Your adrenaline's running high. It's bigger than any drug rush you can ever get. Your blood is absolutely boom, 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 boom.
Anyone who says they don't get sweaty hands before a robbery is probably not human.
But if the robbers lose judgment because of adrenaline, the whole raid is in danger.
I mean, what's important from the beginning of the robbery is actually to take control.
You! Keep your head where I can see you! You get down on the floor!
If you fail to do that, then you create a lot of problems for yourself.
Gaining control of the bank is based on one simple tactic: using the threat of violence to instill terror.
The last thing you intend to do on this robbery is actually kill someone. But you must have them see that you are well prepared to use violence. Keep your head where I can see you! Get down on the floor! I say get down on the floor!
If you're the sort of person who's carrying a gun, you've got to be in control. Focus your eyes on their eyes. Put them right into them so they know what you're talking about. Don't take no shit off them at all. Get on the fucking floor.
I think there is sometimes a public perception that in some way armed robbery is some kind of cavalier, romantic sort of crime. It isn't. It's characterised by greed, by violence, by brutality.
Fear is actually a more potent weapon of the armed robber than his gun.
Shut up! No! Shut up! Out!
Because all the time what you want to do is to persuade the victim that you will do as you say you will. So if you threaten to shoot somebody, that is exactly what you will do. And the victim has to believe that.
You don't need to use firearms and shoot people and all that game. The actual manipulation of fear and terror by doing that is, in my view, is enough.
But in order to manipulate their fear, the robbers cannot see their victims as human beings.
It's very important not to identify very closely with the victims, but merely to see them as objects on the way to achieving your end.
When I was an active armed robber, I had no guilt towards people that I was robbing because I didn't see them as humans. You know, I just see them as protectors of money.
And this is the main weakness for the robber, because when you see people as mere objects, crossing the line into violence becomes all too easy.
These individuals are ruthless.
No, once you've run in there, if someone goes, right, no, everyone on the floor. And the guy goes, no, right? All right? You give them a smack around the mouth, whack, on the floor. All right? Next one, you'll get another belly button you didn't want. Bang, on the floor. And they get on the floor.
He must be some sort of prick if he thinks you're carrying a gun for the fun of it. You're carrying that gun is because, first of all, you want to scare him and you want the money, and secondly, if you have to, you will use it to go away.
It's this brutality that means a robbery can often end in murder.
These people are vicious, dangerous criminals, and they will do anything to avoid double-digit prison sentences. They will open fire, they will shoot cashiers, they will shoot police officers.
We've seen a number of incidents only this year where innocent people have been shot and sadly in some cases murdered.
But let's assume the gang has overpowered the staff safely. They now just have 5 minutes to reach the vault, remove the cash and get away. While the gunman keeps watch on the door, the other gang members take the manager to the vault.
Come on, hurry up! I haven't got keys to the inside cage. Don't need to worry about that.
Although he can only get them so far.
That's it. Get out! Get out! All right, get out! Get out! Put your hands behind. Hands behind your back. Hands! Head back. Pull your head back.
The entryman is about to blow his way into the cash. But that's easier said than done. I went to meet special effects technician Andy McVeigh to find out just how difficult and dangerous it is to blast into a safe.
We're going to be trying out some of these explosives on some fairly rudimentary sort of safes, which we managed to collect down at the other end of the site down there. The things that we'll be using today, that's a lump of Semtex there. A lot of people
This is the real stuff?
That's absolutely the real stuff there.
What could set this off then?
Well,
is it only an electrical charge?
Well, you need to put a detonator in here. This is a very safe explosive in this sort of state here at the moment. If you put a detonator in there, that has enormous cutting power, massive amounts of shock energy released in a very short period of time.
So my mobile phone ringing is not going to make it blast?
We're okay at the moment. This is a nitroglycerine-based explosive. Now, that's used for blasting in quarrying.
So this is your actual stick of dynamite?
This is the stick of dynamite, the sort of thing in the Westerns. We used to have the fizzing fuse out at the end of it, and you used to be able to light that and throw it, and you'd get your big explosion.
So which one of these are we going to use on that safe down there now?
Initially, we're going to use the nitroglycerine-based explosives.
Do you think we'll get in?
Let's just see.
How much charge does this send down to the...
It's going to send about 500 volts. OK, so the key goes into that side there. And once you give that a really good twist, clockwise, make sure you give it a really good twist to release it like that. It'll send that charge from the dynamo in there, and off it'll go.
Ready? I'm a bit nervous, I've got to say.
OK, we're going to stand by for a big bang here, anyway.
Well, we've blown the handle off.
We've taken the handle off, you're right. But really, all it's done is taken a little bit of the paint off.
That's amazing, because that was a pretty big explosion.
But we haven't looked at the explosive that I would choose to go through this safe yet.
Let's try.
Let's go.
The problem with explosives is sometimes it being too good. You know, it being too good can actually blow safes apart, can actually blow doors in, can actually rupture the building, you know what I mean, can actually... Normally the safe is underground, but the explosion can actually just shatter the whole of the windows all upstairs, so the whole shop front blows out, and everyone knows that something's going in.
Our first attempt showed the problem with too little explosive, so now we're going to go for the bigger bang, with Semtex. Are we far enough away to protect ourselves from any kind of shrapnel that's going to come flying our way?
We put ourselves behind here. And it's very possible that some of the parts of the safe, maybe the tumbler lock or even the handle could come flying in this direction, so we've got to be very aware of that.
OK, well, let's give it a go, eh? So we're ready there?
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
Can you feel the shockwave that come off that as well?
Right underneath the car. I can feel it hit my legs.
Just feel that coming across there.
That was huge. Look at the effect of this.
It's blown a hole straight the way through the door and then torn the hinges off as well.
It's unbelievable from that little pack of gelatin.
That's right. The amount of explosive power in that, the force, it's quite astonishing. I mean, this safe weighs 350 kilos, and you can see it's separated the two halves completely.
Yeah.
Can you imagine putting that inside a very small confined space? And you can see the amount of damage that's done.
It would kill you.
Well, it would.
You wouldn't walk out of there.
No, it would be rupturing your internal organs.
Yeah. Luckily for the gang, they've opened the vault without killing themselves or burning the cash. But time is ticking away, and the longer they're in the bank collecting the money, the higher the risk of losing control of the situation, and yet more people seeing what they're doing.
Get down! Get down on the floor! Down! Down! Stay down! Come on! Let's go! Come on! Let's go!
But even if your raid is going like clockwork, you'd still have a problem. There would be witnesses, and every one of them would be trying to remember your face.
Get down now!
Luckily for the robber, witnesses find it particularly difficult trying to recall a traumatic event.
Although you might think that if someone was vividly involved in that, every aspect of it would be imprinted on their memory, that doesn't seem to be the case. And we know this by experience of the notorious difficulties that witnesses often have in identifying people that have directly threatened them in this way.
We've set up an experiment with 3 very real members of the public, not actors. They've been told that they will have one chance to see our robbers exiting the bank. However, what we haven't said is that a week later we'll be testing their memories to see if they can recall any of the gang. Those of you watching can play this game as well. Can you pick out one of these guys from the robbery? Hannah, witness 1, will be the first to see the robbers as they exit the bank. Jackie probably has the best chance of identification, as she is closest to the getaway car. And Adrian will have the longest time of all to get a good look at the gang.
You! Get back! Sit down! Down! You! Get back! Back now! You stay there! Get out! Get out of my way!
How good is your memory? I'm about to observe a police lineup with our key witnesses from the bank robbery. Inside there are 6 suspects, only one of which was at the scene of the crime. Would you be able to ID him? I went to see Inspector Kim Winnett to learn more about the art of identifying key suspects. If someone sees an armed robbery in progress, what should they be looking out for?
Well, the way that we train our officers, what they're looking at in the first instance, obviously, we need to get the correct sex. The next thing will be colour of the skin, any physical features such as height and build, and then colour of hair. Beyond that, we're looking at different features that might make somebody outstanding in a particular way. If it comes down to clothing, clothing can be changed at any time, so clothing is not a great use to us, but the facial features is what we're looking for.
Yeah, I can really feel the tension that's in this room. I mean, you can almost touch it, right?
Indeed.
Are you sure you can't be seen from behind this glass?
Two-way glass. Do you want to come and have a look?
Absolutely. So here we are. So this is where all the witnesses stand up and line up. And...
What will happen is the inspector will be standing there. He'll address the witnesses. The witnesses will come out of that room there, and obviously what they've got is the parade in front of them.
OK, let's get the volunteers in.
Certainly. Can we have all the volunteers come through, please? Right, gentlemen, can you take one step back over the number, pick the number up and hold it to your chest, please?
Are they always this ugly?
You might not necessarily remember the whole picture in the way that, for example, you could identify them afterwards. Because that's not what you're being threatened by. You're being threatened by the gun and by the body language. And it's that you're going to remember very vividly, and that's what's going to come back to haunt you in your dreams.
To be in a situation where you're traumatised, where someone's threatening you with a gun or a knife, the chances of you actually having a very accurate recall are actually very, very slim. And even so, most people can only remember very limited features particularly of other people's faces.
Hannah, how are you?
All right, thanks.
So what do you remember about the robbery?
Not much, to be honest. Someone came out with a gun and I don't know, I just dropped to the floor, basically.
I just remember waiting there to cross the road and I heard these guys shouting, "Get down." And I looked round and they ran towards me with a gun.
I was walking down across the road. They came out through the archway.
I caught a glimpse, but I just felt like I was the first person that they came towards.
So tell me about the moment. Do you think it was scary? Was it traumatic?
Yeah, it was a bit, even though I knew it wasn't real.
It is scary,
I know.
even if you're making a drama, it's scary.
I know, because you know it's a real gun, so...
Of course.
Yeah.
So you were more interested in the guns than the faces?
Yeah, I noticed the guns.
Where was your interest taken to?
The gun.
The gun.
In an armed robbery, you're more likely to remember details, let's say, of the gun that was carried, because that's the direct threat. You remember the shock of it all. But it's perfectly possible that their faces will be a blur, even if they're not wearing stockings or ski masks.
Have a look at our parade. I'd like you to try and pick out the person that you remember seeing there. Take a good look and see if any of their faces trigger any sort of memory.
I would say number 5, because he's the closest to what I have in my memory, but it was so quick and it's really difficult to choose.
Have a look at number 5.
Number 5. Number 5, would you step forward, please? But there was more than one guy there, wasn't there? I can't ask any of them to step forward,
Can you
turn
ask
around.
number 6?
Number 6 to step forward. Number 6, can you step forward for me? Do you want to know who the real bank robber was?
Yeah, I'd be interested.
Will the real bank robber step forward?
Wow, yeah, would not have placed him in a million years.
What do you think of that?
I'm amazed.
Yeah, he was the guy carrying the bag of cash who got into the car. So your attention was drawn to the shotgun.
Totally. Yeah, I remember the shotgun quite vividly.
I would never ever have said that was him.
It just happened so quickly that you do not take enough notice of what's going on.
Yeah. So witnesses are pretty unreliable. But unfortunately for the robber, technology isn't. And it's getting better and better. Of course, closed-circuit television is nothing new. But this 360-degree camera lens is.
Everybody on the ground!
It records one panoramic image of the robbery as it happens, while simultaneously taking 4 different views of the crime, and then can track gang members one by one. And all without the need for a human operator.
Video surveillance has done a lot of progress. In the old days, you used to have tapes, and the tapes needed to be changed on a regular basis, and the cameras were not properly positioned or they were not high resolution enough. Now you can have intelligent software to detect motion, to detect certain types of activities, and you can make sure that whoever tries to steal something will be identified and will be caught.
Coming up next, they have the cash, but can they make a clean escape?
If you can't get your way once you've done that job, then you're all going to jail.
And how the police keep on their tail.
Whoa!
Over the last half hour, we've watched our team of criminals miraculously avoid the many pitfalls encountered in trying to pull off the perfect heist. But it isn't over yet. Getting out of the bank with the cash is one thing, but the job's only half done. You may think you've got the perfect getaway plan, but losing the police is harder than you think.
If you're planning an armed robbery, the first thing you do is look at escape routes. And basically, you know, that's an absolute key, because you have to always plan for contingencies and plan for the fact that the thing might go wrong.
85% of what you're doing is down to the wheelman, because if he can't get your way once you've done that job, then you're all going to jail.
Driving's a serious job, you know. I mean, I've done it and I don't like it, to be honest with you, but then again, someone's got to do it. But it's your responsibility to get these people away to the changeover and get them home.
The getaway is the time when you're most likely to get caught. Trying to outrun the police when all units are alerted is virtually impossible, especially when the police helicopter is tracking your every move.
Outside sequence.
To find out just how difficult it is to lose the law, even in a one-to-one car chase, I went to see one of the best drivers in the business.
Dave, nice to see you.
Hi, Martin.
Got us a bit windy here today.
Yeah, we are a bit windswept, aren't we?
Look, tell me about yourself.
I'm a retired police officer and was a Class 1 for just over 20 years. Class 1 pursuit driver, advanced driver, trained in anti-ambush techniques and fast response driving.
And tell me about the vehicle that we're looking at here.
Well, this is a sort of a typical police pursuit vehicle, really. You've got to have a top-of-the-range saloon car, really, or maybe an estate if it's the sort of car that carries a lot of kit. But it's got to be able to perform. It's got to have fast speeds, low down. You've got to be able to get up to 60, 70 mile an hour very quickly.
But getaway driving is more than just burning away at breakneck speeds.
Your wheelman, he's got to be like super cool. It's not only having the arsehole, it's actually knowing what your car's capable of doing or what a car is capable of doing. And there ain't a lot of people in the world we live in that actually can drive down the road doing 60 and just decide to yank their handbrake up and spin the car any way they want.
So we found a disused airfield, clear of any people, and a racing driver who knew all the tricks that a wheelman might really use. His instructions were clear. All he had to do was lose Dave and me.
Okay, we're pursuing the vehicle now. He's going down what we imagine to be a dual carriageway. We can see round the bend, well up in advance. I can straighten this bend here so there's not so much pressure on the car. We can keep it well balanced.
I mean, that's got to be the most vital time of the chase, isn't it?
Yeah, because if he can lose you within the first 5 or 10 minutes, then he can get away and we've lost him probably forever.
Whoa!
He's losing the back. I'm knocking the speed off.
He's lost it.
We'll stop for a second. We're taking second gear. We have to be ready at that stage that he might have come back at us or jumped out of the car to run off.
Yeah, I mean,
we've got to get out.
He could, in effect, reverse and smash our car up at any time.
He could, yeah, and that's something that you were prepared for in the chase.
See, look at that, you're nice and cool, I'm panicking here.
Well, there's nothing to panic about because I know what the car can do, how to control it.
There's a fine line between a nutcase and a good driver. You've got to have a driver that does know his capabilities. He's in a vehicle that can do what he's capable of wanting it to do.
And the police are quite prepared to use every trick in the book to make you lose him.
Once you hit your brakes, the police count to 3 and then they hit theirs really, really hard. It sends a sense of panic through you and you believe that you can't actually get away. What I knew people to do was to stop using their foot brake and start using their handbrake. This in turn stopped the police from knowing when you was hitting your brakes.
But the police are wise to the getaway driver's tactics.
They quite often think that the police are stupid and they'll indicate that they're turning left when they're not, and they turn right. Disconnect their rear brake lights thinking that we actually take some notice of whether they're braking or not, or use the handbrake to slow them down. But it makes no difference because it's very difficult to move a 2-ton car out of the way by mistake.
Who do you think's under more stress, the getaway driver or the police officer?
Oh, it's got to be the getaway driver. Half of the time their attention is on the mirror inside to see how close the police car is and whether they're getting away. So only 50% of their time is looking at the road and judging where they're going to go.
He should not really care about what is around him and what is behind him. He should be focused on where he's going. To get what I mean? And that's like the essence of a good wheelman, being able to shut off from everyone, not having to worry about your mirror and how close they are behind you, because when they're not behind you anymore, you ain't going to hear them.
One of the classic errors a getaway driver can make is to leave themselves cornered.
Okay, the bandit car now is approaching, looks like a dead end. He's slowing down. He's doing a handbrake turn. I'm going to sit and watch to see what he does. Now, in reality now, I would ram him and stop him escaping.
But even if you manage to escape being rammed, Dave has another technique to keep on your tail.
Because he's got past me, we'll try and manoeuvre called a J-turn, so we'll go back. Flip the car around, take forward gear, and go after him again.
Let's imagine, though, our gang has made a clean getaway. Losing the police is only the first stage of any escape plan.
After a successful armed robbery, you've got to get to changeover. And it's common practice now for anyone committing serious crime that they've got to torch the car.
The car should be burned. You know, in actual fact, there shouldn't be anything left of it. But this all depends on time. This all depends on where you're picking your next motor up from, and the ambience around the place, whether there's going to be people around or not.
You've got to get rid of the evidence. You know, you've got to destroy the evidence. The first 24 hours after robbery is really imperative. You know, you've got to get rid of the cars, the firearms got to be put away, any other extraneous evidence that you've left behind. It's really important to clear up properly.
Plenty of robbers have been brought to justice from leaving just the smallest of clues at the scene of the crime.
Don't rely on other people to do your dirty work, to clean up after you, because 90% of the time they don't do that job and you get caught, which is exactly what happened with the Great Train Robbery. They left someone behind to clean up and they didn't clean up.
So you've grabbed the money, made a successful getaway, and you're celebrating in sunny Spain. Just one problem though. Spending the money can be just as difficult as stealing it. The robbers are celebrating too soon, because before they can even think about spending a note, they have to make their dirty money clean.
As soon as the robbery is completed, I mean, your problems start in a way.
As bank robbers, you've got to make this money disappear so that you can eventually bring it out the other end and spend it.
But trying to turn stack loads of stolen cash into money you can spend can create all sorts of headaches for the gang.
The money laundering process is a multi-stage process. So the first stage is to reduce the bulk. The guys who did the Tunbridge £53 million robbery were probably surprised by just how much paper was involved. Now, if the £53 million were in £50 notes, if you stacked the £50 notes one on top of the other, it would stack over 40 stories high, and it would weigh probably close to half a ton. And the first thing they need to do is reduce that bulk. The second stage is to get it into the world's banking system somehow. Once the money becomes a blip on a computer screen, it's very difficult to find, very, very difficult to follow.
Most robbers have an urgent need for cash, and basically, will not have the time or the facilities to actually, launder money if they need to.
And that's exactly the problem that faced the 1983 Brinks Mat robbers. They went in expecting cash and came out with gold. And touting their stolen haul around the criminal underworld ultimately led to their downfall.
If they don't have the money laundering situation in place, if they haven't built the architecture to move this money, they're going to go to a broker, and the broker is going to say, I can take a certain amount of it. I can't take all of it because it's just too much, but I can take a certain amount of it. But it's awfully hot. I'll give you 10p on the pound, 15p on the pound.
So not only are you left with as little as a tenth of what you stole, you still can't spend it.
You can't suddenly go from nothing to multimillionaire without raising an awful lot of suspicion. And the people who will be most suspicious are the cops looking to put the bad guys behind bars.
It's very, very hard to not spend the money when you know you have it. It is very, very hard.
The problem with bank robbers, they want bragging rights. They want to be able to tell their mates, that was me. They now have this problem. We can't spend it all right away. Have we got the discipline to sit on it, keep quiet about it, and wait 5 years? Well, the answer is probably not. That's where they get caught.
So what happened to our gang of robbers? It looked like they pulled off the perfect bank heist. Or did they? In fact, they left vital evidence and made critical mistakes all along the way. As long as there are banks, there will always be bank robbers. But remember, a heist takes weeks to plan and months to pay off. Plenty of time for the police to track you down.